the Dream 100 Show. The epicenter of influence, collaboration, and exponential growth. You're about to discover the power of relationships. Dream 100 relationships. And you're one relationship away from a totally different business and life. This is your host, Michael Tasner.
What if I were to tell you that your business is slowly dying and even potentially getting ready to go into a free fall and you don't even know about it? In today's episode of the Dream 100 Show, I wanted to talk through the activities, the metrics, the strategy that you need to make sure that you as the leader are deploying. One of the things that I've been noticing, and I have conversations all week long, so what I like to do is I bring the conversations that I'm having to the table. Because I assume that if an entrepreneur brings something to me, that most likely there's another entrepreneur in the room, there's another entrepreneur that's listening that is going through something similar. And what I've been hearing a lot lately are stories about negative growth, or stories about this crazy incident that happened and now all of a sudden they're in a free fall. Even the businesses that were telling me that they're in fast growth, they're deploying the Dream 100, things are moving, all of a sudden something happens and there's week after week after week, or even month after month after month of negative growth, and then they're almost back to zero. And what I've discovered is that there are a couple of key areas that we need to talk through. And what I often will do is I'll just ask a couple of questions. So if you call me frantically, Michael, we were growing, we were doing $5 million a year, we are on track for $7 million this year, and now it seems like we're on track to do $3.5 million. And we had this hockey stick, we were going up, but then XYZ happened. So I pause, and I start with a series of questions. So the first question is, are you currently using a business operating system? Now, there are over a dozen. Some of the most well-known are the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. Another one is Scaling Up, Rockefeller Habits. Another one is called Scalable by a company, the Scalable company, Ryan Deiss in particular. There's another one called Bloom. There's a lot of different operating methodologies, but those are some of the most popular. Now, if they answer yes, Michael, we're running on EOS, there's a follow-up question, and that is, define what you mean by running on. And this question can be applied anywhere across your business. So if I were to ask you, are you deploying the Dream 100? And you say, yes, I'm deploying it. Define what deploying it means. You might say, well, we're reaching out every couple of weeks to people that we believe could help our business grow. Well, in that case, you're not actually deploying the Dream 100 framework. You're reaching out to people, you've got something that you're trying to move, but you're not actually doing it as it needs to be done. Hence, you're not going to get the results that you want. It's not going to be as effective. So it's the same thing. If you tell me that you're using the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and I say, well, tell me what that means. Well, we look at metrics once a month or every other month. We have some meetings, usually once or twice a year. We'll sit down for a day. And that's kind of what we're using right now. The downside to that is that you're using and not even really doing any of it correctly, but you might be using 5 or 10%. So the first thing that I discover, that even if you were doing things and you were on the shiny object train, so a lot of you will jump on, I'm on the train, you want to start deploying EOS, you go all in, maybe you even hire an implementer. Spoiler alert, the implementers can be very expensive. What I define as expensive, but I mean, give or take $500+ an hour. But I can also justify everyone that I've seen that has hired an implementer is growing like the weeds, because somebody that knows the system backwards and forwards and is deploying it is holding you accountable. But it's all of those elements that you need to be doing. So for example, you need to be having weekly meetings with your team. You need to be having an executive meeting where you go through and actually solve problems. You need to be holding your team accountable. You need to have the vision for the course of the quarter, the year, 3 years out. your core values, how your business delivers value to people, all of that strategy stuff. And so, well, Michael, how is that important if I'm growing? Because what ends up happening is there's a trigger event. I'm going to talk through a couple of the trigger events that I've been seeing. One example could be your Facebook ad account gets banned. You were growing like the weeds. You were all in on Facebook ads, accounts banned. So how does that, would have running on EOS have helped with that? Well, you would have brought that up as a potential issue that all of your main leads are coming from, or your main business is coming from one channel. And you would have talked through with your leadership team, how do we solve that? So that if and when that happened, you would have already discussed it and already had plans in place. It's the mitigation. But you need to be, as step one, running on an operating system. And more importantly, not just running, but actually following it as it's taught. Too many of you, and this myself included, you see something, you take it, you swipe and deploy it, but then you apply what you feel, oh, we got to tweak it for our business. This stuff, that the way that they teach it, it's literally deployable across every business, regardless of the type of business. If I really boil all of these operating methodologies down, they're all very, very similar. You need to have some of the strategy stuff on a sheet of paper or two that everyone can be aligned on. You need to be setting and tracking quarterly priorities. You need to be having a weekly meeting with your leadership or your executive team where you, again, solve problems. You look at metrics, you solve problems. You get together once a quarter and you're looking at everything again and you're setting the stuff for the next quarter. Like, that's it boiled down in simplicity. But when I start to look at business owners that write in and say, all of a sudden we're having negative growth or we're in a free fall, this is the first thing that I ask, because you cannot get aligned with your staff, and even if you have no staff and you're just working with vendors, they should be on a weekly call with you where you're solving issues. They should be reporting on key performance indicators that they're tracking, you're tracking. You can still use this even if you literally are a team of one. That's the first thing. The second thing is all about metrics. Depending on the type of business that you're in and how much is changing, how large you are, you could be looking at this data daily. I have some clients that we work with that they look at their metrics every single day. So depending on the type of business and the size of business, from a metric standpoint, you might be needing to look at metrics every single day. I have some clients that they look at 5 to 7 metrics every single day. For most businesses, once a week. The longest that I would ever go would be every other week, but I always suggest at the very least weekly. Now, picking and putting the right metrics on the sheet are very, very important. You don't just want vanity metrics. You want to know, if you were to spend 5 minutes and look at these metrics, are they going to give you a pulse on if the business is moving in the right direction or the wrong direction? So there should be something with sales, gross profit, expenses, so the financial metrics, lead generation, sales, accounts payable, receivable. What are those 5 to 7, maybe 10 metrics that literally will give you the pulse of how things are going? When someone calls me frantically, I'll ask after the operating methodology question to have them send me their metrics. Send me the metrics you're looking at every week. And if I get a response that, well, what would you like to see? That tells me instantly that they took their eye off the ball and they're not looking at the metrics. And that simple one is how you can very quickly turn going in the wrong direction. I've been there. For the first quarter of 2025, I delegated all the stuff that I wanted done from a marketing perspective. I set budgets, goals, expectations, all the projects, everything dialed in, tied up in a bow. And then I moved on to other things for 3 months. The issue is that, number one, I broke my cardinal rule of having weekly one-on-ones with the people that were executing those activities. But even more so, number two, I stopped looking at the data. I looked at it, but I looked at it maybe every 5 or 6 weeks. The data was terrible. I'm like, there's no way that's accurate. Another 5 weeks go by, and all of a sudden, 3 months later, we blew through a ton of money, and we candidly didn't even grow. We had negative growth. Completely took my eye off the metrics. If I would have looked at those metrics every single week for 5 minutes, I could have spotted some issues, given some direction, asked for some more accountability, but instead I let 3 months go by, and that really set a bad tone for the course of the year to where you're playing catch up. You have to identify the key metrics that you as the leader are going to look at every single week. With the Dream 100, it's black and white. How many emails are you sending? How many social media posts went up this week? How many podcasts did you do? How many gifts did you get sent? Or sent out, rather. Getting sent in would be lovely also. All black and white. What gets measured gets done. Now, the third one is an interesting one because it's not as tangible, but there are very easy things that you can execute and track. And this is the people element. Most of us have some element of people in our business. And even if it's clients, for example. But in this case, I'm referring more to the staff side of things. What often ends up happening, and it's that straw that broke the camel's back, or the levees broke and now the water is rushing in, it tends to be something with staff. And usually that item with staff, whatever it is, often it's a money thing, got ignored. And it wasn't that you were ignoring that person intentionally, but it built up week after week after week after week. Now all of a sudden that team member is disengaged. If you're in the services business, now they're performing worse service. You lose some customers, you lose some clients, your cash numbers start to dip and your sales numbers dip. You've got one person that now is toxic. They're negatively influencing other people, and that is where I have seen businesses go in a free fall. It often correlates back to team. Unfortunately, one person who's toxic can literally infiltrate the culture of your entire organization. I'm making a couple of tweaks over the next 2 weeks, literally as I'm doing this with inside of my organization, so my culture, because there are a person or two that I believe is not been a good culture fit and is negatively impacting other people. So how do you fix that? How do you spot it? How do you make sure that that does not derail you? Very, very simple. Every week, you have a 30 to 60 minute one-on-one meeting with everyone who is your direct report. On that meeting, they can bring anything to the table that they want to discuss. You bring anything that you want to discuss, and you look at 3 to 5 key performance indicators, key performance metrics that they can report on to you, that you can judge their performance. Are they moving in the right direction or the wrong direction? If wrong, you give them coaching on the spot. Those weekly meetings, they're going to tell you if they're unhappy, if they need a pay raise, if something is going on, if they have irate customers, if they have an idea. That stuff will get shared. When it doesn't get shared is because you decide to skip those meetings for a week or two, and then you do one meeting, you skip another month. I've been there. Anytime I travel, if I stop doing those one-on-one meetings, things start to break. You have to commit to doing meetings with your one-on-one team every single week. A one-on-one meeting with your direct reports. If you have vendors that you're working with, depending on the nature of what they're doing, it should be at the very least once a month, but ideally every other week. Same kind of conversations. They're bringing talking points to the table. You're bringing them to the table. You're looking at metrics. So if we do a quick recap, these are the 3 things that you need to make sure that you are executing meticulously so that something doesn't pop up and completely sinks your business. I firmly believe that the next 6 to 12 months, we're in for rough waters. There are a lot of signs that are pointing that this economy is going to take a wrong turn. How do you mitigate this stuff? Well, one of them is marketing. Marketing above all. You outmarket everyone when the economy starts to tank, if that's what happens. But you first start with having an operating methodology, one of them that you are deploying with your team every single week. You've got your huddles, you've got your quarterly meetings, your strategy documents, you've got all of that stuff dialed in, tied up in a bow. Number 2, you're looking at 5 to 7 or upwards of 10 metrics every week. You're getting feedback on those metrics so that you can make some tweaks as you need to. And number 3, with your direct reports and then their direct reports. So the direct reports, so let's say you have 5 people that report into you. That's 5 meetings once a week. Those 5 people, if they're managers, they need to have meetings with their team. Everyone on your team needs to be getting a weekly and or bi-weekly meeting. Every single week. This is how you make sure that your business is growing steadily. This is how, if something happens, you can reverse course quickly because you've prepped for it. The team is aligned. You know what metrics to look for. You can tell if a storm is brewing if you're looking at the metrics every single week. Get out there, make some tweaks, build a better foundation so that as things start to scale, you can grow faster and faster. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next week.